So in the lessons we're looking at today and tomorrow, we're talking about these things called cumulative frequency tables and cumulative frequency graphs. And if the distribution of problems on the IB exam, in other words, if you look at the problems that they ask on the IB exam, if that's any indicator, this is one of those like every year questions, like if not more than once. Cumulative frequency is a huge part of statistics and the way that they decide to test it. So I think the easiest way for me to show you what a cumulative frequency table is to show you one. So let's start with a grouped frequency table. Right? So a group frequency table might have something like, the number of dollars that are spent on something on one side, and then the number of people that do that over here. So maybe this is the amount of money that you spend on, a dinner or something. So in a grouped frequency table, so this is grouped, we might have something like, 0 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 5. You might say, okay, 12 people spend that much on dinner. In the next group, because it's a grouped frequency table, you might say 5 is less than x is less than or equal to 10. And say, okay, there are 17 people in this group. And then you might say, x or 10 is less than x is less than or equal to 15. And, maybe there are 8 people in this group. And then 15 less than x less than or equal to 20. We'll say there are 3 people in this group. And some of you are like, oh my god, why are you spending $20 on dinner? Well, maybe it's a nice dinner. So here you go. This is a grouped frequency table because on one side you have groups of data, right? You've got people spending between $0 and $5, between 5 and 10, between 10 and 15, between 15 and 20. And on the right side, you have frequencies. You have the number of people that are spending this amount of money, right? This is a grouped frequency table. If you were to take this data and write it as a cumulative frequency, if you know what the word cumulative means, it sort of means, like continuing from the beginning, right? So the cumulative frequency has the same titles. This is still the number of dollars on this side. This is still the number of people over here. And the first row is going to be the same. Between 0 and 5, you have 12 people. But because it's cumulative, I now don't look at disjoint sets. I'm not saying 0 to 5 and 5 to 10. I'm now saying that it's 0 to 5, and then 0 to 10. So between 0 and 5 was 12. Between 0 and 10 is this 12 plus 17 more. Right? So there are 29 people cumulatively that spent between $0 and $10. Right? My next category down would be between 0 and 15. And between 0 and 15, you have not just the 12, not just the 17, but also the 8. So the quick way to do this is say, oh, well, there have been 29 so far, plus 8 more in the 10 to 15 range. So 29 plus 8 gets us to 37. Right? So if you've understood this so far, you should be able to pause the video and figure out what should go on this next line down. So the next line down should be 0 less than or equal to x less than or equal to 20. And now you're taking the 37 that you had before and adding on 3 more between 5 and 15 and 20, which gives us a total of 40. Okay? Some benefits, some detriments here. One thing that cumulative frequency is really good for is it tells you how many people there were. It tells you, hey, there were a total of 40 people that we were working with here. Grouped frequency is a lot easier for computing mean, and I'm going to have you guys do that in the coming pages, in the coming problems. If you want the mean of this data, this does not make it very easy. The mean of this data you would do by taking this one and saying, well, between 0 and 5, the average is 2.5. There were 12 2.5s. Between 5 and 10 is 7.5. There were 17 7.5s. You could take this and put it into your calculator. You could put 2.5, 12, 7.5, 17, 12.5, 8, and 17.53. Run that through your calculator and find the mean. It'll do that for you. Cumulative frequency doesn't do that as well for you. Okay? So let's take a look at examples that I have. This first example that I have is a really, really common, like, Part A question, Part B question. These come up often early in the question. So below, they give you both a grouped frequency table and a cumulative frequency table that represent the exact same data. They want you to find the values of the constants P, Q, and R, and then use the calculator to determine the mean. So P, Q, and R, by the way, are, here is P, here's Q, and here's R. This is a 9. The Q has a little tail on it. So I want us to find these things, right? And if you're feeling up to it, I mean, really, this is just an adding and subtracting problem. If you're feeling up to it, try this one on your own. It should not take you very long. If you don't think you see how to do it, then listen in for the beginning of my description. Okay? So this one over here is the grouped table. I can tell because there are disjoint groups. This one is the cumulative table because they're all going from 0 up to different things. And you can even see some patterns here. You can see, oh, between 0 and 6 was 5, between 0 and 6 was 5. Then here between 6 and 12 was 9, and that explains over here why there's 14, because 5 plus 9 gets us 14. So now the question is, how will I find out what P is? Right? Well, the idea is, how would you get from 14 to 30 over here? We would have to do that by adding 16 more people on. Well, then P must have been 16. Because that's the way we add these things, right? If there were 14 people before, we need to add this number on to get to 30. Now that I've said that, everybody should be able to do the next step and figure out what Q is. Right? To find out what Q is, well, how do I get from 30 to 55? 30 to 55 would require 25 more people. Those 25 people must have come from Q. Right? And then for R, well, you're at 55 over here, and you're going to add 22 more people on. That means R should be 77. So I hope that made sense. If it didn't, go back and look at this again, because seriously, this is the part A or B of a lot of the problems in the day 3 assignment. So make sure you get this idea. Next, it says use your calculator to estimate the mean of the data. Right? Finding the mean of the data is something that this table is really good for. Right, the grouped frequency table is really good for that. And this is actually a review of what we did yesterday. How do you use this to come up with a mean? Right? This should be the kind of problem where you guys are finding the group representatives, right? So between 0 and 6, the average is 3, and the frequency of that 3 is 5. In the next grouping from 6 to 12, the average is 9, the frequency is coincidentally also 9. Between 12 and 18, you've got 15, and it's 16. The next one is 21, and there are 25 of those. And the final one is 27, and there are 22 of those. And in case you missed it, in case you forgot from the calculator lesson, what you do now is you put all of these numbers into your first list. You put all of these numbers over here into your second list. Usually it's going to be L2. And on your calculator, you're going to hit the Stat edit button to type all these things in. So I'm going to do that now, and then I'll get the answer for you guys. Alright, the video that I had for this last night, I didn't, like my calculator on my computer isn't updated. When you hit Stat edit and you put in your lists, then you quit out of that. We're then supposed to go to Stat, Calc, and then we hit the 1var stats button. And when you do that, it comes up to a screen that says list, colon, and FREQ list, colon, and then calculate. Okay. We need to tell it what our list is. Well, our list is L1. By the way, if you need to get that button, you can hit second 1 to bring up L1. Your frequency, we put all of those in L2. You can get to that by hitting second 2. And then just go down to the calculate button, and hit calculate. And when you do all of this, I ended up finding that the mean X bar was 18.9, which is correct to 3 significant figures. I'm sure you guys have been seeing that notation on the mark scheme. IB always wants their answers to 3 significant figures. So just give them 3 numbers in the answer, and you're done. Okay. I've got one more example, so let's go on and look at that one. Okay, so below is a cumulative frequency chart. I want us to use this data to create a grouped frequency chart and then estimate the mean of the data using your calculator. So on the left side I have minutes spent on the assignments, and on the right side I have the number of students. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to fit this sort of on the right side of this thing. If I scoot that over, I can. So let's see here. If I'm going to create a grouped chart for this, I'm going to have minutes on assignments. And over here again I'll have number of students. Right? So what minutes of assignments do I have in this first grouping here? Well, it says x is less than 15. You can't spend negative time on an assignment, so I'm going to say 0 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to 15. And there were 12 students in that category. At the next group up, we're now doing grouped frequency. I'm not doing cumulative. This is now going to be 15 is less than x is less than or equal to 20. Notice I didn't put 16 here because somebody could have spent 15.5 minutes. The best way to do this is to just take the same number but don't put the or equal to line. So between 15 and 20, how many students were in that category? If there were 20 here and 12 of them were in the first category, that means 8 of them must have been here. If you haven't already done so, pause the video and make sure you can fill out the rest of this, which really just amounts to subtraction. I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable with it. So 20 is less than x less than or equal to 25. If there were 20 here and 37 here, that means there's 17 people in this category. 25 less than x less than or equal to 30. Let's see, if there were 37 here and 59 here, that means there's 22 in that category. Then you got 30 less than x less than or equal to 35. From 59 to 67 is 8 more people. And then 35 less than x less than or equal to 40. You've only got 3 more people there. So this is your grouped frequency. Right? Now that you have this group frequency, how do we find the mean? This is the exact same process we used on the other one. You guys should be finding the averages of each of these ranges, putting them into your first list, taking the frequencies of each of them and putting them into your second list, and doing the computation. I'm not going to show the work for that. I'm just going to get the answer and put it here in just a second. Alright, I said I wasn't going to show all the work. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video and write it all down, and that way you guys can check your work if you need to. Alright. So the answer I got for the mean was this 22.7, again given to 3 significant figures. So there it is, that's your correct answer. These were the midpoints of all of them that I chose, and these were the frequencies that I used. Hopefully that made sense. I'm going to go on now in the next video and talk about cumulative frequency curves, which is again a huge piece of this thing. So be ready for that.